Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome to GMA24 Update News Channel. Hope you will enjoy our news video. Before we begins, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here's the news title: Nigel Farage warns vulnerable Rachel Reeves. Her days are numbered as Chancellor braces for revolt reform. UK leader Nigel Farage has claimed shadow chancellor. Rachel Reeves is in a more precarious position than Labour leader Keir Starmer ahead of today's farmers' protest in London. Speaking to GB News, Nigel criticised Reeves's budget for denting confidence in the UK economy and targeting farmers with sums that don't add up. He called for the complete abolition of inheritance tax, describing it as death taxes. Whatever level you're at, I think inheritance tax, or more accurately, death taxes, should be abolished outright, Nigel told Eamon Holmes and Ellie Costello. Farmers are staging another tractor protest outside Parliament today against Labour's proposed inheritance tax changes. The rally comes as MPs debate an e-petition with over 148,000 signatures calling to maintain current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms. Latest developments. Labour has confirmed it will not reverse its plans to introduce a 20% inheritance tax rate on farms worth more than $1 million. The changes, announced in the budget, are set to come into force in April 2026. The new rules will end an existing exemption that allowed family farms to be passed down without paying inheritance tax. The Reform UK leader argued that current inheritance tax rules have distorted land values, citing examples of wealthy investors exploiting loopholes. Some big billionaires have bought up vast tracts of Lincolnshire, pushing land prices up to $25,000 an acre, because there has been an inheritance tax loophole, he told GB News. He warned the proposed changes would have wider implications beyond agriculture. The new proposals don't just affect farmers, they affect family businesses as well, and it's just yet another reason why people are selling up and leaving the country, he said. Joining protesters in London, Nigel rallied support for the farmers, cause the family farm should not be driven out of existence. Politically, I think we can win this, the Reform UK leader told demonstrators. He insisted that MPs need to listen to the farmers. Nigel expressed optimism about the protest's potential impact, suggesting there are some wins that could be achieved through continued demonstrations. The whole thing is monstrous, he declared, referring to the inheritance tax changes affecting both Nigel farms Farage and families. Has launched a scathing attack on Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, claiming she is in a more precarious position than Labour leader Keir Starmer, as she braces for a potential backlash over her economic policies. His comments come as farmers prepare to stage a tractor protest in London against Labour's proposed changes to inheritance tax. Speaking to GB News, Farage accused Reeves of denting confidence in the UK economy with her budget proposals, which include tax hikes that he argues unfairly target farmers. He particularly criticized the Labour Party's plan to introduce a 20% inheritance tax rate on farms worth more than $1 million, set to take effect in April 2026. Farage described inheritance tax as a death tax that should be abolished outright. Whatever level you're at, I think inheritance tax, or more accurately death taxes, should be abolished outright, he told GB News hosts Eamon Holmes and Ellie Costello. His remarks have resonated with farmers who fear the new rules will threaten the financial viability of family-run farms. Today's protest outside Parliament comes in response to Labour's decision not to reverse its planned inheritance tax changes, despite growing opposition. A petition opposing the new tax regime has already gathered over 148,000 signatures, reflecting widespread concern within the agricultural community. Under the current system, working farms can be passed down through generations without being subjected to inheritance tax. However, the proposed reforms would eliminate this exemption, forcing many farming families to pay significant sums to retain their land. Farage argues that existing inheritance tax rules have already contributed to distortions in land values. He cited examples of wealthy investors exploiting tax loopholes to buy up large tracts of farmland, leading to skyrocketing land prices. Some big billionaires have bought up vast tracts of Lincolnshire, pushing land prices up to $25,000 an acre because there has been an inheritance tax loophole, he told GB News. While acknowledging the issue of speculative land purchases, he contends that Labour's approach will only exacerbate problems for small and medium-sized farm owners. Beyond the agricultural sector, Farage warned that the new inheritance tax proposals could have wider implications for family businesses across the UK. The new proposals don't just affect farmers, they affect family businesses as well. And it's just yet another reason why people are selling up and leaving the country, he stated. Joining the protesters in London, Farage delivered a passionate speech rallying support for the farmers' cause. The family farm should not be driven out of existence. Politically, I think we can win this, he declared, urging MPs to listen to the concerns of rural communities. He expressed optimism that sustained pressure from demonstrations and public outcry could force the government to reconsider its stance on inheritance tax reform. Farage's involvement in the protest marks his latest effort to position Reform UK as a champion of the working class and rural Britain. He has consistently criticized Labour's tax policies, framing them as harmful to small business owners and entrepreneurs. The Reform UK leader has also advocated for broader tax cuts to stimulate economic growth and prevent capital flight. His intervention comes at a time of growing unrest among UK farmers, who have been grappling with rising costs, supply chain disruptions, and regulatory pressures. Many see the proposed inheritance tax changes as yet another challenge that could drive them out of business. The demonstration outside Parliament highlights the depth of frustration within the farming community, with protesters demanding that MPs take immediate action to safeguard the future of British agriculture. As the debate over inheritance tax reform continues, Farage's vocal opposition underscores the potential political fallout for Labour. With an election on the horizon, the controversy surrounding these tax changes could become a flashpoint in the broader economic debate. For now, Farage remains steadfast in his campaign against what he describes as a monstrous policy that threatens the livelihoods of hard-working families across the UK. Steel industry's desperate plea to Keir Starmer as Trump threatens trade war. Chaos US president says he will impose 25% tariffs on any steel coming into his country. Sir Keir Starmer has been told he must do more to protect Britain's steel industry from Donald Trump's threatened tariffs. The US president has warned that he will impose 25% tariffs on any steel coming into his country. Aluminium will also be subject to additional duties, he warned. The UK government is waiting to see details of Mr. Trump's policy. However, the steel industry body has called for decisive action from ministers, while unions warned further jobs could be put at risk in a sector that has already suffered badly in recent years. The UK exported 166,733 tons of steel to the US in 2023, and a similar amount last year. The US is the industry's second-largest export market after the EU, although the government said it only accounted for 5% of UK steel exports in 2023. UK Steel Director General Gareth Stace said if Mr. Trump went ahead with the tariffs, it would be a devastating blow to our industry and damage over $400 million worth of the steel sector's contribution to the UK's balance of trade. He added, "It is deeply disappointing if President Trump sees the need to target UK steel, given our relatively small production volumes compared to major steel nations." The UK produces world-leading steel, supplying the US with high-quality products for defense, aerospace, stainless, and other critical sectors, materials that simply cannot be replicated elsewhere. There are fears within the industry that US tariffs could also mean exports from other countries, such as China, are diverted to the UK, heaping further pressure on the domestic industry. Alastair McDiarmid, Assistant General Secretary at a trade union community, said, "At a time of uncertainty for the sector, a punitive new tariff on UK steel exports would be hugely damaging and threaten jobs. For the US, it would also be self-defeating, as the UK is a leading supplier of specialist steel products required by their defense and aerospace sectors." Downing Street said the UK and US work closely together on a range of economic issues, supporting jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. I haven't seen any detailed proposals following the reporting overnight, but we will obviously engage as appropriate, said the Prime Minister's official spokesman. He would not be drawn on whether the UK would retaliate if Mr. Trump imposed tariffs, describing the question as hypothetical. The UK steel industry was hit with tariffs in 2018 during Mr. Trump's first term in office, but those import taxes were eased in 2022. So far in his second term in the White House, Mr. Trump has imposed, but then delayed, duties on imports from Mexico and Canada. He has also imposed 10% levies on goods from China. The president has previously suggested a deal could be done to exempt the UK from tariffs, while claiming Britain is out of line in its trading relationship with the US. Liberal Democrat. Leader Sir Ed Davey urged the Prime Minister to hold crisis talks with the leaders of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to discuss the tariff threat. He said, "Donald Trump's latest threat of tariffs will plunge many into deep uncertainty, not least those working in our great British steel industry. Keir Starmer must immediately call a four-nation summit with leaders across the United Kingdom to agree a joint plan to protect our economy from Trump's damaging trade war." Tom Clafferty, executive director at the Institute of Economic Affairs, said, "Tariffs are a tax on domestic consumers. With living costs high and growth sluggish, they are the last thing Britain needs right now. That logic doesn't change just because other countries impose tariffs on the import of your goods. Retaliatory tariffs simply add to the pain. The government should pay little attention to what other countries do in response to US protectionism. The right course for Britain is to trade as freely as possible, whatever the industry is facing an existential crisis, as former US President Donald Trump threatens to impose a 25% tariff on steel imports into the United States. Industry leaders and unions have called on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer to take immediate and decisive action to shield the sector from potentially devastating consequences. The threat from Trump's latest move, if enacted, could severely impact the British steel sector, which exported 166,133 tons of steel to the US in 2023, a figure projected to remain steady for 2024. The United States remains the second largest market for UK steel, accounting for 5% of exports last year. The loss of this market due to tariffs could result in economic hardship and job losses across the sector. UK Steel Director General Gareth Stace warned that these tariffs would be a devastating blow to our industry and could damage over $400 million worth of the steel sector's contribution to the UK's balance of trade. He stressed that UK steel supplies the US with critical, high-quality products that cannot be easily replicated elsewhere, particularly for defense, aerospace, and specialist stainless steel applications. Knock-on effects of the tariffs industry. Experts fear that these US tariffs could have broader ramifications. If American markets close their doors to UK steel, exports from other nations, particularly China, could be diverted to the UK, further saturating the domestic market and driving down prices. This scenario would exacerbate the existing struggles of British steelmakers, who have already faced numerous challenges in recent years, including high energy costs, competition from lower-cost producers, and uncertainties surrounding Brexit. Alistair McDiarmid, Assistant General Secretary at the trade union community, underscored the gravity of the situation, stating that a punitive new tariff on UK steel exports would be hugely damaging and threaten jobs. He also argued that Trump's decision would be self-defeating for the US, given the UK's role as a key supplier of specialist steel for critical sectors such as defense and aerospace. The government's response. The UK government has so far adopted a wait-and-see approach, with Downing Street confirming that it has not yet received detailed proposals regarding the tariffs. The Prime Minister's official spokesman stated that the UK and the US work closely together on a range of economic issues, supporting jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. However, the lack of a clear and immediate response has prompted calls for stronger government action. The Liberal Democrats' leader, Sir Ed Davey, has urged Starmer to convene a four-nations summit with the leaders of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland to formulate a joint strategy for addressing the threat. The economic and political stakes a major concern, is that Trump's trade policy could reignite the trade tensions seen during his first term in office, when similar tariffs were imposed on steel imports. Although those duties were eased in 2022, the reintroduction of protectionist measures under a Trump administration could undermine the UK's fragile economic recovery. Furthermore, if the UK retaliates with its own tariffs on US imports, it risks escalating trade tensions further, potentially leading to a full-blown trade war. Tom Clougherty, executive director at the Institute of Economic Affairs, warned against such a move, arguing that retaliatory tariffs simply add to the pain. He emphasized that the right course for Britain is to trade as freely as possible, whatever the circumstances. What can the UK do? Given the scale of the threat, the UK steel industry and its supporters are calling on the government to consider several countermeasures. Diplomatic engagement, urging Starmer to engage directly with US officials, including the Biden administration, to negotiate an exemption for UK steel exports. Trade policy reassessment, exploring potential trade agreements with alternative markets to compensate for the loss of US trade. Domestic support measures, implementing financial aid, tax relief, or subsidies to protect jobs and ensure the long-term viability of the UK steel industry. Protection against market flooding, strengthening trade defenses to prevent an influx of cheap steel from other nations that could further harm domestic producers. Conclusion. The UK steel industry's desperate plea for protection highlights the fragile state of one of the country's most important industrial sectors. With thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of pounds at stake, the government must act swiftly to mitigate the potential fallout from Trump's tariff threats. Whether through diplomacy, economic policy adjustments, or direct financial support, the need for urgent intervention cannot. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video.